So I'm here with Sally Prickett from Arup, obviously one of the companies at the backbone of the UK's energy sector. And I wonder if I can ask, what's the single biggest bottleneck holding back the UK's clean energy build out right now?
I mean, it's a really exciting time that we're living in, and I've had a background in energy for multiple decades, and it's really exciting to be part of this time in the UK energy industry and everything we're doing. But it's not easy.
No.
And I think as we look at it from an Arup perspective, we've got generation projects being developed, you've got kind of connections and a lot of demand for electrification, but it's really that grid infrastructure and the pace of build out of the grid that is going to be a differentiating factor to support electrification, to support renewables development and bring that whole system together.
So on that, do you think we're underestimating perhaps in some ways just how disruptive building and creating this new energy backbone will be, or do you think we're in the right place to do that right now?
I don't think we're underestimating it, because I think the scale of the challenge is understood. Are we fully positioned today to overcome all of the obstacles? Probably not, but as an industry and as Arup, we are working to identify risks, solve challenges, and really we just published a report called Grid Unlocked, and that talks about a programmatic approach and being able to be systematic around overcoming the obstacles, around recognising the impact that building a backbone will have on communities, and they really need to be thought about in how this infrastructure is developed.
So in terms of your Grid Unlocked report, how will things look, or how would you like things to look meaningfully different in, say, 5 years' time?
5 years isn't a long time in energy, but we need it to feel like a long time. So I think that we need to be at a position where we're really developing that new grid infrastructure, and also where we've got, I think the piece that we're really passionate about at Arup and the work that we're doing with our clients like National Grid is around how we engage with communities and get that place-based rather than a case-based approach to planning and consenting, and that means understanding what the communities need, but also talk a lot about what the economic value is of all of this investment, and it's huge. But that's really difficult to tangibly understand for communities. So we need to create the bridge there. So we've done a lot of work that talks about that ultimate opportunity. In 5 years' time, I would like that opportunity to be understood by more people kind of across the UK, not just those at Innovation Zero today, but the communities that are really impacted by development.
I think that's a really interesting point, because I think in energy, sometimes public consent is often sort of the quiet deal breaker, for big energy projects. So how do you go about, or how do we all go about best engaging communities? Is it something we need to get better at? Are we heading in the right direction?
I think we're definitely heading in the right direction, and I'll summarise it into kind of 3 different areas that we're thinking about. One is about how do we communicate better, and how do we use technology to do that? So using visualizations to actually show what new infrastructure will look like, which leads on to the next thing of how do you actually design with communities. We've always talked about designing for communities, but how do we actually bring that into a with, so that we can do that together, and being able to communicate what that infrastructure looks like is a big part of that. And at Arup, we're designers and engineers at heart, and really building the design and the consideration of the communities and the impact of the infrastructure from day one. So we're thinking about it in design, not just in a afterthought.
Yeah, so sort of really practical terms.
Practical things like understanding that you're going through an area that's particularly sensitive, and so putting cables underground rather than overground.
Okay, great. And I wonder now if I can touch a little bit on hydrogen. Now, hydrogen has been described as both essential and uncertain, so slightly paradoxical. What do you think will determine whether the UK actually makes it work at scale?
So my big passion is that we think about the energy system as a whole. And electrification is a really important part of that, but not everything can be electrified. So there are places where we need molecules. And hydrogen and the associated kind of methanol, sustainable aviation, all of those molecules are needed for the world that we live in. So there is a need. I think what we're seeing in the UK today is less of an issue with need, it's more of an issue with pace. And what we really need is continued certainty from the government. So in the UK we have world-leading policies in terms of the hydrogen business model, the allocation rounds. But what we've seen is some of the pace of the rollout of that has left some of our clients, some developers, moving away from hydrogen, putting capital into other areas. So I think we really need to see that consistency.
Okay, great. And I wonder if I can turn attention a little bit to supply chain now, and how can the UK build supply chain resilience without slowing investment?
So the panel I was just on had a really good discussion on this, and Dan McGrail from GBE was talking beforehand, and I think the UK is really well positioned to take the opportunity, but we do need to ensure we have a certainty of pipeline to allow that supply chain to invest into. And once we have that certainty, and we do have it, there's really good examples, ASTI that Ofgem rolled out in 2022 gave that certainty around 50 gigawatts of offshore wind, which allowed the manufacturing base to invest into it. And we need to see the same across the energy sector.
Okay. And interesting, you talk about GB Energy there. I mean, what should government be doing to help the process even further?
So first of all, I'll call out, I think, the policy frameworks, the regulation, the position we are in the UK, it is really, really good. I think what the next step is to become really programmatic about our approach. There's a lot going on, and that's a lot in terms of capital investment, in terms of infrastructure development, but all the pieces that then need to sit around that, the planning and consenting that we talked about, the regulation, market reform, all needs to be thought about and happen in a systematic and programmatic way. And that's something that we talked about in our Grid Unlocked report as well, of how an approach like that can unlock supply chain. It can unlock huge benefits for the country.
Yeah. And then to sum up then, how do you feel about the next 5, 10, 15 years? Is it a feeling of optimism? Is there a feeling of fear or cautious optimism? Or how do you feel about the next few years?
I'll start with a really personal perspective. So I've been working in the energy industry for over a quarter of a decade. I am so excited and proud to be leading the UK energy business for Arup. My career has been very global. We have this huge opportunity in the UK and we're really getting after it. So from a very personal perspective, I'm hugely optimistic. There's also an awful lot to do. So that sits in the worry box, but I love a worry. A worry gives you something to go and solve.
Great, okay, so there you hear it here. Optimism and excitement as well. Great basis.